The transport shuttle detached from the Galactic Tribunal cruiser like a bullet fired from a railgun. Inside the pod, Dane Ryker sat strapped to a carbon alloy bench, wrists bound by magnetic cuffs, ankles similarly restrained. He barely noticed the jarring vibrations. After all, Earth's Class 15 storms could make shuttle turbulence feel like a gentle breeze. Through the narrow viewport, he caught a glimpse of Tarkon Black, the prison world. It was a bleak, frost-covered sphere orbiting a dying red star. The facility sat atop a jagged black ridge, its lights like malignant eyes peering through the atmosphere. Every rumor said it was inescapable, brutal, and designed for the worst scum in the known systems. Dane suspected most of those rumors were exaggerated. And if they weren't, well, he'd endured worse. The interior lights of the pod dimmed. A synthesized voice addressed him in 8 different dialects before settling into a common tongue. You are designated inmate 04758D, threat level, Apex. Survival probability, not applicable. Welcome to Tarkon Black. He smirked. Not applicable. Not applicable. Or not available. The AI didn't even know how to calculate his odds. The landing was harsh. The pod struck the icy platform with a bone-rattling jolt. A hiss of steam burst from its seams as the hatch cycled open. He remained still, allowing the security protocols to complete their sequence. 2 guards approached, each armored in kinetic reactive plating, their plasma rifles already powered. He could see the trembling in their legs. "Remove the restraints," said a deeper voice behind them. A third figure stepped into view, tall, chitinous, with segmented mandibles twitching in thought. Warden Zoltan. Black carapace polished, 3 eyes cold and unblinking. Dane had seen holos. The Warden was infamous for cracking down on riots by depressurizing entire sectors. Efficient. Merciless. Predictable. Zoltan scanned him with a low hum. "Earthling. Your reputation precedes you." Dane tilted his head. "Funny. Yours doesn't. Must be a long list." The Warden didn't react, though the guards stiffened. With a wave of his hand, the restraints deactivated. Dane stood, slowly stretching his limbs. The cold bit into his skin, but not deeply. Compared to the mountain blizzards of Yukon Prime, this was a mild chill. "This facility is not designed to accommodate Deathworlders," Zoltan said. "Our records suggest you are capable of irregular behaviors. You will be placed in E-Block. Solitary." Dane stepped off the pod, boots crunching against frost-crusted metal. "Sounds peaceful." The escort didn't speak again as they moved through the outer gates. Scanners lit up around him, trying and failing to analyze his biology. One beeped and sputtered, unable to catalog the density of his muscle tissue or the redundant layers of immune systems Earth had forced into its offspring. He could tell the guards were uneasy. The armor made them look formidable, but he caught how they avoided eye contact. The inner doors parted, revealing a hallway coated in industrial steel, its walls stained with decades of grime. Surveillance drones buzzed quietly overhead. Other inmates watched from behind reinforced glass, Krellian berserkers, insectoid warlords, cannibalistic Gasari twins. Every pair of eyes turned toward him. And then quickly turned away. His cell was on the lower level of E-Block. Isolated. Reinforced. Double-barred and magnetically sealed. He stepped inside without protest. The door slammed shut behind him with finality. A single bed, a wall-mounted nutrient dispenser, and a ventilation slit were the only features. He glanced around, then sat cross-legged on the floor, closing his eyes. 2 hours passed before anyone spoke to him again. A voice crackled through the comm. "Hey. You, need anything?" He opened one eye. "Do I sound like I'm dying?" "No, just, protocol says to check. I'm Carlex. Guard rotation shift 6. Dane rose to his feet and approached the intercom. "Carlex. Amphibian species, right? Brackish water homeworld. Hibernates during solar flare season. What are you doing here?" A pause. "Serving time in the right uniform." He chuckled. "Guess we both are." Carlex didn't answer immediately, and then, hesitantly, "They say your planet is a nightmare. Is that true?" Dane leaned against the wall, watching the shadows flicker under the slit of light above. Depends on what you call a nightmare. Acidic rain? Predatory flora? Carnivorous birds that mimic human infants to lure adults? Sure. But the real nightmare was high school cafeteria food. The guard laughed, nervously, but it was genuine. He didn't press further. Dane appreciated that. Later, through the floor grate, he heard sounds, low, aggressive hisses. Voices in a language he didn't recognize. Prisoners, no doubt, gossiping about the new arrival. Word would spread fast. The human was here. The Deathworlder. The one who tore apart a battlecruiser's boarding party with his bare hands. The one who survived the Varka pit, unarmed. Most of it was exaggerated. Not all of it. The next day, he was escorted to the common yard. 2 guards, weapons raised, led him through a maze of retractable corridors. No other inmates were present when he arrived. They released the door seal, backed away, and watched from behind blast shielding. It was a cold, open area, metal benches, stone blocks, and workout gear that looked like it hadn't been used in years. He examined it methodically. No blind spots. No loose plates in the walls. 2 upper balconies with firing ports. They weren't taking chances. He knelt and began stretching. Deep lunges, shoulder rolls, neck rotations. Let them watch. Eventually, the others trickled in. In groups of 2 and 3, each one sizing him up. Their body language was clear, tense, probing, uncertain. The strongest among them, a Vordax bruiser with tusks the length of a man's forearm, moved toward him. "You human?" it asked, voice like gravel dragged across a hull. Dane straightened slowly. "Last I checked. You break skulls. Kill soldiers. Earth legend. Stories grow in the telling." Vordax bared its teeth. "We test you." Dane's eyes narrowed. "No." A pause. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. No one said no to the Vordax. "I test you asterisk," Dane continued. Without warning, he lunged, not with aggression, but with the sudden, terrifying precision of someone who'd trained for war since childhood. He stepped inside the Vordax's reach, hooked a leg behind its knee, and brought it down like a felled tree. One movement. Efficient. Clean. The yard fell silent. The Vordax lay stunned. Not injured. Just confused. Dane extended a hand. "First lesson, pick a better opponent." The bruiser blinked, then grunted and took the hand. He hauled the alien to its feet. No applause. Just silence. That was louder. When he returned to his cell, the door closed without comment. The intercom buzzed again. "That was impressive," Karlex said. "I didn't come here to fight," Dane replied. "But they'll force me. So I made it boring." He lay down on the bunk, folding his arms behind his head. Karlex hesitated. "You think this place can get boring?" "Any place can," Dane said. "Fear only works when you expect a reaction. I don't give them one." There was a pause, then a quiet hum of static as the intercom clicked off. For the first time in weeks, Dane closed his eyes without tension in his shoulders. He wasn't free. He wasn't even close. But they'd already made their first mistake. They gave him time. Time to watch. Time to listen. Time to wait. And that was all he ever needed. The yard wasn't empty this time. Dane stepped into the open space flanked by 2 guards, who kept a nervous distance as if proximity alone might trigger an incident. Above, automated turrets pivoted subtly to track his position. Dull sunlight filtered through the translucent dome overhead, barely warming the frosted concrete underfoot. Across the yard, clusters of inmates paused mid-conversation, mid-exercise, mid-stare. He didn't need to read body language. The mood was clear. Word had spread. Most of the prisoners lingered near the walls, wary, avoiding direct confrontation. But some watched with calculating eyes, measuring him, wondering if the rumors had been exaggerated, or worse, understated. Among them stood the iron spines. They were hard to miss. Marked with embedded metal bands that jutted out from their joints and spines, they strutted like apex predators. 8 of them, species varied, all muscle and bravado. At their center was Gorosh, a towering hexapedal brute with matte blue skin and a cranial crest covered in crude etchings. He stared at Dane like a starving animal sizing up a threat it had no choice but to challenge. Dane rolled his shoulders and moved toward the exercise bars. Every step was deliberate, calm, unconcerned. He adjusted the pull-up frame, tested its give. It creaked slightly but held his weight as he launched into smooth repetitions. He didn't look, but he felt them approach. 4 steps behind. Gorish led. "You're the Deathworlder," said the voice behind him. "Gravel in tar." The human. Dane finished a pull-up, dropped down, and turned. "You're the gang with the terrible name." That earned a chuckle from one of the smaller ones. It died fast under Gorish's glare. The leader stepped forward, nostrils flaring. "Your kind doesn't belong here. This place has rules. Structure. We own this yard. Then you'll understand when I say I don't rent space." Silence stretched like tension on a bowstring. Gorish made the first move. Not a strike, but a feint enough to see if Dane would flinch. He didn't. Instead, Dane pivoted, grabbed the extended arm, and used the creature's momentum to slam it into the ground. Not violently, just hard enough to send a message. Gorish grunted, stunned. Dane stepped over him and placed a knee on his back, not applying weight, just presence. "You picked the wrong animal," Dane said softly. The other spines moved forward but halted as a whir of turret activity hummed above them. Red dots bloomed across their chests. Dane stood, backed off, and raised his hands. "I'm finished." The guards didn't move. The drones watched. The entire yard remained frozen for another 10 seconds before Gorish groaned and climbed to his feet. Dane could see the fury boiling behind those black eyes, but also the hesitation. He wouldn't make the same mistake twice. Later, Dane sat alone in the mess hall. The food, a gelatinous sludge of plant proteins, tasted vaguely like burnt kelp. He ate without complaint. Every meal was data. Every corner of the facility, every interaction, every overheard whisper, pieces of a puzzle. Kalex approached cautiously, tray in hand. "Can I sit?" Dane gestured to the empty bench. The guard lowered himself stiffly. He wore the standard riot armor but had removed his helmet. His skin glistened slightly under the fluorescent lights, the subtle sheen of an amphibian physiology adapting to the dry air. "I heard about the yard," Kalex said after a moment. "Which version?" "The one where you killed Gorish and fed his bones to the roof drones." Dane smirked. "That's new. They always embellish the bone part." Kalex studied him. "Why not finish it? You had him down. No turrets would have fired before you cracked his skull. That's not how you build influence. Or allies. Fear's easy. Respect takes finesse. You're trying to build allies? Here. Not yet. First I learn the board. Then the players. Then the hidden hands." Kalex tilted his head. "You think this place has hidden hands? I know it does." Across the hall, one of the surveillance drones flickered. Just for a second. Most wouldn't have noticed. Dane did. Kalex tapped his fingers against the tray. "You've been here 4 days? And you already think there's something else going on?" "I know there is," Dane repeated. "The Warden runs a tight ship. Too tight. But some sectors are blind. Some shifts don't match standard rotation schedules. There's smuggling. Maybe extortion. And someone's skimming energy credits from the central core. Only possible from the inside." Kalex swallowed, throat bobbing slightly. "That's a serious accusation." "I'm not accusing anyone," Dane said, finishing the last of his food. "Yet." When he stood, Kalex didn't follow. He sat in silence, thinking, processing. That was good. Doubt was a useful seed. By the 6th day, Dane had mapped out the daily rhythms of Tarkon Black to the minute. Patrol shifts, drone cycles, feeding schedules, light rotations, all clockwork patterns, brittle and inflexible. That rigidity made them predictable. And predictability was leverage. He leaned against the corridor wall just outside the medical wing, a gash from the prior day's ambush stitched clean across his forearm. The wound barely hurt. What caught his attention was the way the guards tensed when they walked past him. Even when unarmed, even wounded, their body language was tight, nervous. The myth of the Deathworlder was growing without his help. Kalex approached with a datapad in hand, expression unreadable under his visor. He gestured for Dane to follow. They took a side corridor normally reserved for cargo trolleys, narrow, poorly lit, no surveillance. They changed your security tier again, Kalex said. You're now listed as active disruption threat, class Delta. That's just one step below kill on sight. Dane gave a dry laugh. Must have impressed someone. Or threatened someone. Kalex didn't smile. His webbed fingers clenched the datapad tighter. Trellix pushing hard, he continued. His rewriting logs, moving inmates in and out of the industrial wing without Warden approval. I overheard 2 officers talking about increased shipments that don't match requisition manifests. Smuggling, Dane said. I can't prove it. But things don't add up. And you, Kalex hesitated. You're becoming a symbol. That's dangerous. Symbols invite sabotage. Or rebellion. Dane looked at the amphibian guard. Kalex wasn't just loyal anymore. He was changing. The wide-eyed or had hardened into something sharper, conviction born of choice, not fear. You're not here for penance, Kalex said, lowering his voice. So what are you here for, Dane? Really? The human studied him. Weighing the trust. Then, after a pause, to shake the hive. See what flies out. Later that night, the pieces began to fall into place. Voxk returned, slipping into the cell through a ventilation shaft he had apparently reworked himself. The old mercenary looked more amused than cautious, as though crawling through air vents in a high-security prison was a casual evening stroll. The iron spines are backing off, Voxk said without preamble. Too risky. Word is, Trellix wants someone quieter. Quieter, or more obedient. Voxk's eyes glittered. Doesn't matter. You rattled his chain. He's bringing in new talent, off-worlders, trained killers. Not inmates. Imports. Mercenaries. Maybe. Or worse. Dane paced the room, mind shifting gears. Trellix wasn't just smuggling contraband, he was running a shadow operation inside a prison already known for handling galactic monsters. Whatever the endgame, it involved power, profit, and probably more than one corpse. I'll need eyes, Dane said. On his routes. Entry points. Guard shifts. Voxk grinned, showing sharpened teeth. Already ahead of you. I've got 4 willing rats and 2 drones under my skin. Figuratively? Mostly. They began laying out a network. Dane didn't want an uprising, he wanted a structure. Inmates who could pass messages, guards who could be swayed, engineers with access to core systems. Everything compartmentalized. Fail-safes in every step. By the next day, Kalex had quietly added a dozen names to the maintenance roster under false work orders. Voxk's team rerouted thermal regulators to create temporary blind zones in key corridors. Dane used the exercise yard to train others in controlled confrontations, pressure point holds, balance breaks, pain compliance techniques that didn't leave marks. These weren't rebels. Not yet. But they were learning discipline. And that was contagious. Still, Trellix wasn't idle. A series of unexplained transfers rippled through the facility. Inmates who spoke too loudly or asked the wrong questions vanished, shipped off to other sectors or quietly erased from the registry. Dane kept track, carving names into the underside of his bed frame. 31 by the end of the week. That was the Real alarm bell. Not the attacks. Not the spies. But the silence. Dane waited for his next assignment, which arrived through Kalex, perimeter trash sweep. Menial. Out of sight. Isolated. He knew immediately what it was. A setup. He played along. The waste field sat just beyond the inner wall, shielded from the atmosphere by a thin energy dome. Fragments of scorched metal, discarded machine parts, and broken tools littered the snow-covered terrain. 2 guards waited at the gate, visibly bored. Both were newer, unfamiliar. He stepped outside with a thermal mask in place, breath clouding behind the visor. As the door hissed shut behind him, he counted seconds. 20, 30, 40. Movement. 3 figures emerged from behind a broken supply crate. No insignia. No prison uniforms. Light armor. Shock batons. Mercs. The first came fast, aiming low. Dane sidestepped, caught the strike, and redirected it into the second attacker. Snow exploded in a flash of light as the baton discharged against armor. The third moved behind him, fast and silent, reaching for a chokehold. He dropped, grabbed a shard of metal from the snow, and drove it backward. The man screamed, clutching his thigh. The pain would be temporary. The message wouldn't be. Dane stood, bleeding from a cut across his cheek, and faced the 2 still conscious. He didn't attack. He waited. They didn't stay long. Back in his cell, Carlex patched the wound in silence. His hands were steady, but his eyes kept flicking to the door, as if expecting something worse to crash through at any moment. "You shouldn't be alive," he said eventually. "That's becoming a theme. Why not kill them? Because now they know they can fail. That sticks deeper than fear." Carlex sat back, bandage stained. "If Trellick gets bolder, he won't send amateurs next time. I hope he doesn't." Carlex lowered his voice. "Zoltan's watching you now. He doesn't talk, but I've seen his requests. He's asking questions. About your movements. Your influence. If he thinks you're organizing a rebellion." "I'm not," Dane said. "I'm organizing a truth." Carlex stared at him. "You think that's safer?" "No. But it's right." That night, Vox returned with a data chip grainy footage, time-stamped, showing Trellick in the lower armory, overseeing unauthorized shipments, exchanging sealed packages with an unknown figure wearing a diplomatic cloak. Not a smuggler. Not a mercenary. Someone higher. Dane watched the footage 3 times. Then he sat back and let the silence grow. "Tarkon Black isn't just a prison," he said finally. "It's a vault. They're hiding something. Or someone." Vox nodded. "The deeper you dig, the colder it gets." Dane rubbed the scar on his forearm. "I need access to Sector 9. Vox stilled. "No one goes to 9. That sector's dead. System says it's uninhabitable, power drain, structural collapse. Except Trellick's shipments come from there. And those mercs. They came from the South Corridor. Sector 9 connects there. That place is sealed for a reason. I want to know what that reason is." Vox stood, quiet now. "Then we'll need more than rats and whispers." Dane nodded slowly. The web was tightening. Trellick wasn't a lone operator. He was the surface of something bigger, something deeper than profit or blackmail. Something the Warden hadn't spoken of, but definitely knew. And whatever it was, it lay in Sector 9. Behind walls thick with secrets. He sat on the edge of his bed, rubbing his palms together as if warming them for a storm. Time to move faster. Time to open the vault. The corridor to Sector 9 hadn't been used in over 15 years. At least, that's what the digital records claimed. Dane had learned not to trust official data, not in a prison where secrets were currency and silence meant survival. He moved through the access tunnel in complete darkness, the emergency lighting conveniently under maintenance. Behind him, Carlex kept pace, nervous but determined, his footsteps whispering against the floor. Vox crawled ahead, eerily silent, tail coiled tight to avoid dragging. The last door they reached bore no label, no warning glyphs, only an old, hand-carved symbol, a split circle with a single slash down the center. Not military. Not civilian. Something older. Dane pressed a magnetic core against the panel and waited. The lock whined, stuttered, then hissed open with a reluctant sigh. Cold air flooded out, dry and metallic. Inside, Sector 9 was everything the rest of the prison was not: pristine, silent, untouched by decay. Not abandoned. Preserved. They stepped inside. Lights flickered to life, low and sterile. The walls gleamed with brushed steel. Surveillance units blinked red along the ceiling, watching but not reacting. Carlex lowered his voice to a whisper. "This place isn't decommissioned." Dane nodded. "It's quarantined." They passed through a checkpoint with biometric scanners, none of which activated. Whatever protocols were once in place had either been overridden or disabled. At the end of the main hall, a reinforced door waited. Unlike the rest, this one bore a current power signature. Vox reached for a data port, linking a bypass device. "This one's still talking," he said, eyes flicking across the readings. "Biometric lock. Multi-species. Two-factor clearance." Karlek stepped forward, hesitated, then offered his own palm. The reader rejected it with a hiss. "I can try Zoltan's code," Vox offered, "but we get one shot before it triggers a lockdown." Dane placed his hand flat against the panel. "Try my profile." The system scanned him, paused, then accepted the input. A low chime echoed. The door began to open. Behind it was not a cell block, or an armory, or a vault. It was a lab. Rows of containment units lined the walls, each filled with stasis gel. Inside floated prisoners, humanoid, insectoid, aquatic, even one that seemed to shift subtly between shapes. Not dead. Suspended. Karlek moved between the tanks, breath shallow. "These aren't inmates. They're test subjects." "Worse," said Vox. "They're weapons." Dane approached a console and tapped through a layer of encrypted files. Logs scrolled across the screen, biological enhancement programs, neural stability trials, species compatibility experiments. Some of the test subjects weren't even criminals. They were conscripts. At the end of the room stood another chamber, tall, heavily shielded. Its occupant floated upright, arms at its side, features obscured by frost and mist. Human, but larger than average. Muscular build. A scar bisected the upper lip. And on his neck, the same symbol they'd seen at the entrance, the broken circle. Karlek stepped beside Dane. "You know him?" "No," Dane said, though his voice lowered. "But I know the program." He reached for the control pad. Project Vindicator. Classified Black-tier bioengineering, Earth-based but shut down after a tribunal ruling. This one shouldn't exist. Vox narrowed his eyes. "Then what's it doing here?" "Trellick isn't just smuggling. He's incubating a private army." Karlek's voice turned sharp. "For who?" "That's the question." Behind them, the alarm sounded. A deep, rhythmic pulse filled the lab, followed by the unmistakable click of blast doors locking into place. Dane turned to see the entry point they'd come through sealed by a kinetic barrier. Karlek raised his rifle. "We're not alone." From the far end of the lab, Trellick stepped forward, flanked by two guards and a cloaked figure whose face remained hidden. Trellick wore a smug expression and no visible armor. He didn't need it. "I wondered how long it would take," Trellick said, voice calm and dry. "I have to admit, Ryker, you were a variable I didn't account for." Dane shifted his stance, subtly aligning with the nearest cover point. "That's your mistake. Most people don't calculate for hurricanes either." Trellick gestured around. "This isn't about me. You've stumbled into something far more elegant than your little inmate rebellion. You see, the tribunal has no idea what lies beneath its own prisons. And they don't care. As long as the monsters don't escape, the methods don't matter." Karlek stepped forward. "You're experimenting on prisoners." "No," the cloaked figure replied, voice low and female. "We're refining survival." The voice struck something deep in Dane's memory, but he didn't flinch. Trellick smiled wider. "You should be grateful. We even considered offering you a position. You're already halfway to becoming one of them." Dane didn't respond. Instead, he launched forward. The fight erupted in seconds. Dane struck the nearest guard with a shoulder blow that drove him into the wall. Karlek fired 2 bursts at the cloaked figure, but she moved fast, ducking behind containment tanks. Vox vanished into the shadows. Trellick drew a pulse blade, slashing toward Dane with practiced precision. But Dane caught the wrist, twisted, and drove a knee into the subwarden's gut. The blade clattered to the floor. Trellick gasped and fell back, windless. From behind the tanks, the cloaked woman emerged again, this time activating a shock device aimed at Karlek. The arc hit him square in the chest. He stumbled but stayed upright, firing once more, this time catching her shoulder. She dropped behind cover, hissing. Vox reappeared from behind, sliding a blade across the throat of the second guard before he could draw his weapon. Clean. Efficient. Dane didn't hesitate. He turned to the stasis chamber, punched in the override, and stepped back as steam flooded outward. The system hissed and cracked open. The enhanced human inside collapsed forward, gasping. His eyes met Dane's. The man didn't speak, but the look said everything. Recognition. Relief. Rage. Kalex staggered toward them, breathing hard. What now? Dane grabbed the recovered pulse blade and handed it to the enhanced soldier. Now we break the silence. Sirens echoed louder. Security would swarm within minutes. But the footage was already transmitting, routed through Vox's improvised relay and broadcasted to the prison's internal servers. Every inmate, every low-tier guard, even the warden himself would see the truth. They'd exposed the hidden core of Tarkon Black. The myth was broken. Trellick groaned from the floor, clutching his side. Dane knelt beside him. You buried your empire in ice and silence. But the cracks were always there. Outside the lab, the sounds of chaos grew, doors opening, weapons drawn, shouts rising. Dane stood, surrounded by allies he hadn't expected to find in this frozen hell. He looked back once at the now-breathing weapon from Earth's forgotten experiments. Then he stepped forward, toward the oncoming fire. He wasn't the only storm in the room anymore. And Tarkon Black would never be the same.